got something on my mind. And I need to get it off my chest. Every 15 years, the government has a 15-year itch. So in 85, introduced capital gains tax. 15 years later, GST. And believe it or not, we're 15 years down the track of the GST. So they're starting to get their 15-year itch again. What are they going to do? Tax reform. Over the weekend, I spent a couple of days reading Joe Hockey's white paper. Anyone join me on that? It's actually quite, it's not too bad a read. It was in plain English, and what I really took out of it was that the government has this great difficulty of how do they balance this, how do they get enough revenue in, and how do they meet the competing targets, because if they do this, then that's the effect. And if they do the opposite, then this is the effect as well.
I think, Thomas, there is also that concern, I don't know if anyone saw on the weekend paper, that New Zealand stats are much better than Australia's.
Yeah.
Got 15% too.
There is a lot in the white paper about New Zealand. And, you know, the key things, and basically everything's on the table. It's not just income tax or GST, everything's on the table. The comments, or in summary, the key issues were that Australia has an over-reliance on income tax. It's overcomplicated. Globalisation is affecting tax. How are we going to tax savings? And so, but they don't produce any solutions. So, in terms of income tax, Australia has 40% of the government's revenue comes from the collection of personal income tax. 20% of the government's revenue comes from the collection of corporate tax. And the third one, of course, is GST. Australia's income tax system is highly complicated. There are over 100 taxes, and the complexity adds to its cost. Only Denmark generates more revenue through income tax than Australia. Australia is the second highest OECD country in terms of income tax generation. And it's interesting, where does that income tax come from in terms of individuals? Well, obviously, if you look at the tax brackets, $0 to $16,000, there's no tax. And I can't use my cortex, I have to use my calculator to remember those stats correct.
You're as bad as Chris Bowen.
Yeah. I'd like a wife that would do it. 2.3 million people earn between $0 to $16,000. So their contribution to the economy is, in terms of tax revenue, is 0. The next bracket is 16 to 37,000. That's at a 15% bracket. There are 3.5 million Australians in that bracket. So slightly more than the 0 bracket. And they contribute less than 4%. So far we've got, what's that, 3.5 plus 2.5, about 7,000, 6 million people contribute less than 4% towards the revenue. The next bracket's the big bracket, 37,000 to 80,000 in income. It's a 30% tax rate. 33% of all government revenue comes from, or income tax revenue, comes from that bracket. That's a third. The 80 to 180,000, so starting to get up in the income levels now. They're paying tax at 37 cents in the dollar. How many people? 1.8 million. So the number starting to dip down. And they contribute 37%. So these people contribute more to Australian government revenue than any other sector. In the top bracket, above 180,000, everyone in this room here, 290,000 Australians are in that top bracket. How much do you think they contribute? Well, that's a good question. 27%. Is that all? I mean, how much? There are 24 million people, 300,000 contribute nearly a third of Australia's revenue. You can see how it's really skewed. That, Australia is living off the sheep's back. It's living off almost 300,000 people. There are 800,000 companies. They pay 20% of all of the revenue. And of those 800,000 companies, 2/3 of revenue is generated by 2,000 companies. So again, everything is skewed. Like the media, I think, really are hounding the rich need to pay more. But the rich really do contribute a lot towards Australia's revenue. When it comes to the Australian tax system is complicated. There are over 100 taxes. And that complexity adds to cost. $40 billion spent administering the tax system. It's a huge number. The complexity is exacerbated because we also have state taxes. And not only do we have state taxes, every state has a different sort of mechanism to calculate their tax. As Joe was saying, the way we have to do things differently. This is the Thomas Skeffington report. Why would states collect any taxes? Why can't we get rid of all the stamp duty? Wouldn't that make it easy to transfer property around between different entities? Why not get rid of payroll tax? Why not get rid of all those taxes? Because at the moment, you've got legislation being produced and protected and defended in every single one of those states. You could get rid of all of the bureaucrats, all of the work that the accountants and the solicitors do in simply administering an arbitrary system. Wouldn't it be much better if you put some of those resources into productive, contributory work, and we had a much simpler level of taxation? New Zealand is one of those, I think we mentioned about New Zealand earlier. New Zealand, they said, well, let's give up we'll do a deal. Let's give up some tax deductions and we'll give you a tax reduction. So we'll lower your rates, but we'll only lower your rates if you give up some of your deductions. So for many individuals in New Zealand, where they're simply wage earners, they give them, I don't know what the number is, I think it's like a $500 deduction. And you think about it today with technology, the ATO already knows through your tax file number what you earn through your wages and salary. They already know through your tax file number what you earn through interest and dividends. They know this information. They can tell you your last year's expenses. So they said, why don't we just give you, if you're a wage and salary earner, straightforward, we'll do your tax return for you. We'll give you an outright $500 deduction. At the end of the year, you'll get a refund or you'll pay. End of story, you don't have to file. Well, the result was so successful. They produced so few, or the number of tax returns lodged reduced so much that the tax office there were able to save an enormous amount. And that is being flagged at the moment too. It will affect some accounting practices, as Joe alluded to earlier, but it actually makes accountants able to work with you in your business rather than